Hey guys, tonight's guest, L. Sidney Fisher, is a medium who's going to be talking about ghosts of the South, particularly ghosts of Mississippi. So join me in about 5 minutes and we'll see what she has to say. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Some of you, it's really evening. For me, it's 6:30 p.m. Pacific. How's everyone doing today? Excellent. I hope you're doing as well as I am. Just a word of warning that it's hot. Okay, I turned my AC off because I have a through-the-wall air conditioner, and if I leave it on, it's going to sound like there's a phantom jet coming into my studio. So I can't run the AC. It's 100 degrees outside. So I have a nice ice-cold bottle of water sitting here, and I'm going to do something I don't normally do on camera. I'm going to drink water, okay, to stay hydrated. We got a great guest tonight. My name is Charlotte. I am going to be your host for the next hour or so. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of this lovely Sacramento, California. We're 45 strong, and we have people up and down the state of California spread out so that if you have a paranormal need and need help, we can get to you anywhere you are. So the best way to get a hold of us is either via our website, californiahaunts.org, or californiahauntsradio.com, and we'll get back to you. Or you can find us on Facebook or find me on Facebook. It's easy. It's easy to find me. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody, and hopefully you're going to enjoy the show tonight. Cindy Fisher is with us. It's going to be by phone, and she has done studies all over the South and different ghost studies, and so you're going to hear about that. She's written lots of books on the subject, so you're going to hear about that. But anyway, we'll get her on the phone here in a second. Announcement for Saturday. Saturday's class, there's still openings for the psychic development class. The introduction to psychic development, that's still open. So hopefully one of you guys, or some of you guys, will come join me over there. You can get that at our CaliforniaHauntsMeetup.com site and check it out. Check out the class. Any funds we make, for the class go back to the team because, like I've told you guys before, we don't make any money doing this stuff. So, we always need equipment and things like that. So it helps us to do that. Let me open this thing up here a little bit here. I don't want to waste the battery on this. You might see me get off screen for a second or two here. I uploaded everything but Sydney's photo. And I tried to open Corel a few minutes ago and it didn't open, so I'm probably not going to get access. This computer can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So you're going to see pictures of books today, guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'm going to give Sydney a call and get the show on the road, okay? Literally get the show on the road. So let's dialing music. Oh no. Oh no. This is not happening. Hang on, let me find the number, the cell phone number. Yeah. Okay, let me make sure I've got the right number here. I just tiled it out and it's not working. So already we're off with a bang today. Let me get this going here. Oh, I think I dialed the wrong number. No, that's the right number. Uh-oh. This can't be this. Well, it's the hell the day has been. My day has been like this, and I believe that's her cell phone. That's what I'm trying to contact right now. Let me just dial directly. Maybe I didn't need the other number in front of it. Let's double check this. I might have to get her on Skype. So just bear with me. I can do this. I can do this. Really, I can. I might have to go to Skype for this. So, do you hate when this happens? We were going to have a guest tonight. Just bear with me. Live radio. Gotta love it. All the years I've been doing live radio, this is... Okay, try it now. Call. See? Perfect.
Hello.
Hi, this is Charlotte.
Hey there. We finally connected. I was going, what's going on?
Let me get you hooked up over here, okay?
Okay.
How are you today?
Good. How are you doing?
It's hot. I'll tell you, it's really hot today. So,
well, where are you located?
In Sacramento, California.
Oh wow, it's hot out there then.
It's 100 degrees today.
Oh my Lord.
So it's kind of crazy. And then my studio, I have to turn the air conditioner off because it's through the wall, so the thing's really loud. So the mic will pick it up. It'll sound like there's a phantom jet coming through my house.
Wow. I guess I didn't realize that you were 2 hours. Let's see. You're 2 hours. 6:30 is. It's 8:30 here, so you're 2 hours behind me. I don't know why in the world that I was thinking that I was 2 hours behind you. I don't know how I got so confused. So I sent you a few emails, and I went, oh my goodness. I don't know how I got so confused.
It happens.
I know better than that.
I get confused all the time with it. I mean, it's nothing new for me because trying to figure, especially if people are over in Australia and stuff, it really throws me.
Oh wow.
Trying to figure all that out.
Oh yeah, gosh. Oh Lord. Yeah.
So tell me about you.
Okay, so I have been writing since I was a kid. So I was about 8 or 9 years old, but I started out doing some poetry and writing some short stories and things like that. So I actually just this must have been one of those innate. Either if it's a gift or it's a desire, or they all kind of go together, I think. But it started at a very young age for me, and I had my very first paranormal experience when I was around 8 years old, and that kind of opened up a doorway, to a curiosity about the supernatural and the paranormal. It's lasted a lifetime.
Right.
I started, my mom, the one thing she always did for me that I have forever been grateful for is that during the summer vacations, when we were out of school, she would drop me off at the library. We lived in a little small town. Things were very safe back in the day. You could drop your kids off, and it was a different time. But you could drop your kids off at the local library, and they had programs for children. And I got to spend a lot of time there. And part of that time was spent going through the bookcases in the New Age section. And I'll never forget how that I would sometimes pull books down out of the bookshelves, and I would sit in the floor and just thumb through all of them and decide which ones I wanted to take home with me. So that's kind of how I got my start in writing about the paranormal. It's just kind of followed me my entire life.
Interesting. And you're also a medium, correct?
I am. Now, I don't usually, I don't go around telling people that, just because I've always said that I don't think it's something that necessarily can be manipulated, just like ghosts are not something that can be manipulated. It really depends on whether or not they want to talk or want to be seen or come around and things, even when I've done some paranormal investigations. But as a medium, it really depends on the circumstances, whether or not and also how strong the entity is.
Right.
If they have a message that they want conveyed and that kind of thing. And sometimes I will open myself up and allow that to come through, and I'll communicate with them. It really just depends. I had a very interesting incident happen just a couple of weeks ago, actually, when I was on a ghost tour. I was on vacation in Pensacola, Florida, and I took a ghost and graveyards tour. And part of the tour was absolutely fabulous. We got to stop at this house that was featured on the television show, The Haunted Collector.
Oh, cool.
Are you familiar with?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Are you familiar with that show?
Yes.
So this is an old Victorian home. It was built around the beginning of the 20th century, early 1900s, and we went into the house, and so, I've gotten a little bit of backstory, but just mainly just about the fact that the house was haunted.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't even seen this particular episode of The Haunted Collector, but I was familiar with the show. And so when I arrived, I had booked my ticket, and when I arrived there, the lady there, her name is Ivy, and she had told me, she says, I made a phone call, and I actually were able to actually stop on tour and go inside this house. And she said, I wanted to tell you this, and I did tell, the owner that you were a clairvoyant medium. And I said, oh, my goodness, okay, I'm very excited. So I did a little bit of background study of, and just from what she had told me, and she told me, that it had been there had been ghosts in there. There had been, seems like I read that there was maybe poltergeist type activity there.
Mm-hmm.
So I had just a little bit of information. But I didn't know any history that much about the house. Really,
right.
Not any. So when we got there and walked in, I'm telling you, Charlotte, from the minute I walked in the front door, there he was, standing on the stairs, right as you walk in the front door. And it was so funny because he just stopped and he turned around and he seemed to be kind of amused. He had this expression on his face. As we all there was probably, I don't know, maybe 20 people in the group. And we walked into the front foyer there. And he just kind of, almost that stance of maybe putting a hand on the hip.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just looking at us, and he had this little smile on his face. So, it was funny. We started to walk on. She starts moving us. The owner of the home was giving us, the history of the home. She was telling us a little bit about it. So she moves us into another room, and I watched him. He turned around, and I'm not kidding. He walked up those stairs and started on the second floor, which was a landing there, and just kind of disappeared.
Wow.
So I was going, oh my gosh, there he is. So I knew immediately, okay, this man is here. He was wearing a dark suit, almost, and it was really funny to me. He had dark features, dark hair. He had a mustache. I remember that. And if his suit had it was like it looked like a tuxedo. The old timey ones from that you would see back in when the guys wore the top hats and they had the long tails.
Right.
The suit had the long tails on it. But she moved us into another room, and that's where the main spirit really came through, big time. It was so overwhelming. The energy of that spirit was so overwhelming. It almost made me just want to burst forth and interrupt her and say and tell her, you absolutely have got to talk to whoever this lady is. She wants to talk to you so bad. And come to find out, it was her. It was her mother.
Wow.
Her mother. The person that I was sensing was the mother of someone who was connected to the house or had spent time there or had lived there at some point. And she was not elderly, but she was, maybe late 60s, early 70s. At the end of the tour, and you have to be careful sometimes. I've always said who you share your crazy with. Because some people they think you're nuts, but at the end of this tour, I just couldn't. It was just overwhelming to me, and I said there is. It was so strong that she was trying to talk while I was standing there, and she's very. She had a very strong personality, stern, very vocal, bold a little bit. And she just wanted to be, she wanted to talk. Of course, the lady was narrating part of the tour, so I didn't get to, to really tune in to her. But I later told her about that, and she said that was my mother, and my mother was 73 years old. And I didn't go into a lot, but once we left there, I told the host, Ivy, I said, I didn't want to, to overstep my bounds. But I said that spirit is wants to talk to her so bad. So, if they could get a medium in there to talk, that would be good. She's wanting to tell her daughter something for sure. So that was very interesting, and that was an incredible home. It was a wonderful tour, but it was also an incredible home, and it was a neat opportunity where I got to put my, it was that moment, Charlotte, when whether or not I wanted to be a medium that night, it was like the ghost said, well, tonight's your night, and we're not going to let you just shut down. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool.
When you talk about the crazies, I remember when I first started out ghost hunting, and I remember going out, and that was just as the show Ghost Hunters was starting out, and all that Ghost Adventures was starting to come out. And I remember when I would go talk to people about, possibly investigating, I had to go to the city of Woodland to get permission to investigate, to let them know that we were going to be filming and investigating in the city. And I remember going in, and you went in delicately. You're right about the crazies, because I remember, having to explain to them and tap dancing around it. And finally the gal said, "Oh yeah, I watched Ghost Adventures," and I went, "Thank God," because it's just so hard because people think you're nuts.
Yeah, and it's interesting though because, gosh, I started to say 20 years ago, but that's not even accurate. I would say, 20 years ago is when I think Ghost Hunters and stuff really got cranked up on the series. And so, but if we even went back, let's say a decade before that, I mean, there was this time when, it was not accepted. It was, and you've got to also consider too, I think it's interesting what you're saying about that, because we are actually, you and I live in different areas of the country. So the culture is a little different. But I live in the Bible Belt. And so way back when, there were just some things that you just didn't talk about, that you didn't do, that might be translated as to devil worship or something crazy. Now that's crazy. But so you just had to be very careful. And of course, we know better now. We know better than that. But, way back, that was not the case. But it's very interesting because, the age of spiritualism got really cranked up in the 1840s, all the way through to about the 1920s was a very active time. And, it was called the Golden Age. And, the thing is, there were actually people that were participating in some of these seances and things. I'm talking about people that you would not even think. People like J.P. Morgan were known to be seen at some of these meetings where they would have seances and things. And they say that this, of course, really got cranked up after the Civil War, during the Civil War, because there was so much blood loss. I mean, there was so much death during the Civil War, and so people were really trying to cope at a horrific time in our history, and so it was a means of trying to contact people who had passed on. And that kind of thing. So that was, but it stayed on up until, it was very almost mainstream, if you will, until the better part of the 20th century. And then, of course, it kind of, other things, it kind of died down some. But a very interesting period, and definitely for spiritualism, was during the 1840s to about the 1920s. Very interesting. And, Mary Todd Lincoln she used to have seances regularly.
Right.
In the White House. I've always said it. If the White House is haunted, it's because Abraham Lincoln's wife was having all those seances. There's no what she conjured up.
This is so fascinating to me because when you think of the South, and as far as ghosts go, it's got to be really active because of everything that happened out there.
Correct. And so when you think about that, I had a lady, a friend of mine, came here to visit but she was doing some research for a book project on Elvis Presley. Because the city where I currently live is Elvis Presley's birthplace. And she came and stayed here for a little while, and she and I met on, I used to give history tours of the downtown area, so she wanted to come along, and that's how she and I met, and we became friends, and have stayed friends all these years. But she was here visiting for a while, doing research on Elvis, and she also is a medium and a very gifted person. And she told me after being here, she was from Minnesota. She told me after being here for a little while, she said, you know what? She says, until the land is cleared, there will always be horrific hauntings and stuff. She said the land is still, it's covered in blood. And I said, well, how do you expect to do that? I said there were 600,000 people that died during the Civil War, and 400,000 of those died due to exposure, disease, dysentery, all those type of things. Only 200,000 were actual battlefield deaths. And I said, and it was fought on Southern soil. So I said, that's going to be difficult, But she would say to me, it's everywhere I look. The land is full of, like tormented souls and things like that, and sudden death. And I said, yes. There's battlefield sites around, even in the town where I currently reside. There are a lot of places here, and now this also has a Native American history.
Mm-hmm.
So there are areas that are not just related to the Civil War, but there are Native American grounds that have hauntings, and it's pretty common, and people are almost used to it. It's, nobody kind of reacts. Every now and then you'll see somebody that they will kind of, scoff or smirk if you say that, oh, don't go near, such and such a place because it's haunted or whatever. Most everyone kind of, if you refer to certain areas, they'll be like, oh yeah, I don't doubt it. So they kind of has accepted it now as just a part of the way it is, of the history and things like that. So definitely, even in the area where I live, there's, you look at the land and you look at places that are haunted all across America, not just in the South, but you look at places all across America that are haunted, and sometimes it has nothing at all to do with the structure that's there, the building or whatever. It has to do with what happened on the land. It may be something that is attached to the land. The land could have been a cemetery. You have to do your research and find out if you can find out the history of the land and where you are and that kind of thing, wherever the particular location is that you are experiencing a paranormal activity, then that's going to be your answer as to why it's happening. And I've always kind of approached them as it's just a mystery. They're all, and I love mysteries. I grew up loving Agatha Christie. So it's her fault that I'm on this. It's her fault and the ghost that I'm following at 8 years old that's led me down this path. But that is, it's just a mystery that can be solved by finding out the history of a location.
Now, when you talk about ghosts and hauntings in Mississippi, what types of ghosts are we talking about?
So, there's different types of hauntings. There are residual hauntings and intelligent hauntings, poltergeists, things like that. And you've probably, talked about this on other visits that you've had with other paranormal authors, maybe. I will tell you that there is a combination of all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
In Mississippi, I've spent about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, actually traveling with a team that I recruited to do paranormal investigation. And I was working on a book series called The Haunted, which kind of covers Mississippi hauntings. And I went to some places that were, there's really not any words to describe adequately how scary some of this stuff was. There's one particular place that I went. It was, and I named the chapter in the book, The Devil's Den. That was the location's name that I gave it, because it was the most horrific thing. And I don't think that anything can help it. I think burning it to the ground and making sure that nobody goes there to live is probably the best thing that can happen, because it does have demonic activity. And yeah, it's very, very bad. This particular family had moved into this. It looks like a lake. Looks like a lake house. Had a big, huge front porch that ran all the way around the second floor of the home, and they were so excited about moving into this new home. They had extra room for their children. Everybody had their own room. They weren't cramped up anymore. They moved from a smaller home into this, and for 6 months they lived there. But the lady told me that it was it destroyed her life. Her husband, what happened was her husband became spiritually oppressed.
Mm-hmm.
And something was attacking her son. It was really bad. And then her husband ended up committing suicide in front of the family.
Mm-hmm.
And he used a shotgun. So it was something that for the rest of her life, she'll be traumatized. But she told me some things that had happened there, and some things that he was experiencing. And I asked her, I said, had he ever shown any kind of depression or strange behavior or whatever? She said, look, we were married for 10 years, and it was 10 years of the best of my life. Those were the 10 of the best years of my life. And she said, our problems did not start until we moved into that house. And she said, I'm talking about a personality change. She said, she was at the kitchen counter one night. She was at the sink, and she was washing some dishes. And he came up behind her, and she said, he just said to her, I ought to cut your GD throat.
Dang.
And she said, I stopped and just jerked around and said, what in the world? And she said, he was not even the same person. And she said, I am telling you, that man had barely raised his voice to me in the 10 years we had been married. And he was telling me I ought to cut your throat. No, he said, slit your throat.
Yeah.
I ought to slit your GD throat. That's what he said to her. So she was terrified. And the morning that this happened, they were seeing things. They were seeing this thing had to be 7 to 8 feet tall. Now, I'm telling you some of this stuff because I actually went into this place on 2 different occasions. The first time I was only there for about 15 minutes, and I said I would never go back without a team with me. So I went back on the second time I went back was on was to do a paranormal investigation. And I had the team with me. But they were seeing a huge, dark shadow. I've got pictures of this thing that was snapped, and it is the most disturbing thing that you will ever see. I'm telling you, what was captured it like rocks you to your core. The other thing they were seeing, they would see an old lady that was humpbacked, and she had like hollow black eyes. And one day she was sitting in a rocking chair on the front porch, and they had had some sort of family dinner, and one of the uncle, a family member, walked out onto the front porch, and he was like throwing water out of a glass or something over the front of the rail off the second balcony. And all of a sudden he hears wind chimes start chiming, but the wind is not blowing. So he turns and looks, and there she is sitting in that chair. He threw what was in his hand, threw it over the railing, and ran back inside the house. Then ran out of the house, got in his vehicle, and never came back there. So this was this crazy stuff was going on all the time. And then the morning that the suicide happened, the husband had actually cut the landline, the phone. The phone, they had a landline phone in the house. He had gathered the car keys and everything up, had hid them in the basement below, and had snipped the phone lines.
Wow.
So she couldn't even make a phone call. What she thinks, and what later, during the investigation, they came out and, and of course looked at stuff. They believe that what was intended to happen that day, he was going to kill everybody. But the bullets, he only found 2 bullets, and one of them jammed. One of them jammed or misfired or something, and he was able to get the other bullet off, and he shot himself. He meant, they believed that everybody was going to die that day. Yeah.
Wow.
And it was a mess. It was really, really a mess. So there was some other things that actually occurred during their 6 months there. It was the most bizarre thing ever. I did some history and did some research on the property and stuff. That place, I don't know how you're going to fix it. There's been on 2 or 3 different occasions, there was a Catholic priest that went out and blessed the property, these people sought help. They tried to find help. Before they had actually moved into the place, though, there was already some bad energy there. There had been a family that lived there months before, and a woman had given birth to a baby and stuffed it into a 5-gallon drum.
Ooh.
And set it at the end of the driveway. And the infant's body was found 7 days later.
Yikes.
So there had been a murder that had occurred. They knew about that before they moved into the home, but they weren't superstitious. And there had been, maybe a stretch of time between what had happened between that time and them moving in. And they saw almost like the Amityville horror story. Isn't that funny that we bring that up, even though some people say that was a hoax? There's bits and pieces of that may have been legit. I think it was over-dramatized for sure. But, supposedly, according to the Amityville horror story, the Lutzes were told beforehand that Ronnie DeFeo had killed all of his family in that house, but they weren't superstitious, and they said, this is a great price. This is a wonderful price on this home. This will be a great starting over point for us. We're going to do it. And they got all the furniture. The Lutzes moved into Ocean Avenue with all of the furniture that belonged to the DeFeos. So how would you like to be living in that?
Yeah, that would freak me out. No.
That would freak me out. That really happened. In fact, I wrote about this. It was in March. Let's see. Can't remember if it was March is a significant day. I think it's when he might have been found guilty, but anyway, DeFeo recently died. So he died a year or so ago. But I wrote about that. You can actually access some of the things that I write about. I blog all the time on medium.com under L. Sidney Fisher, and I wrote about that, the DeFeos. So, yeah, it's an interesting article. But that's the same type of situation with that particular family called the Devil's Den that I wrote about. They just saw it as an opportunity. They weren't superstitious. There had been a murder that had happened there, but they saw this as a great opportunity for them to, get into a bigger place and all that kind of stuff. And she will tell you to this day, it totally destroyed her life. So that has been my worst situation I've gone into. Now, as far as other hauntings and ghosts, I mean, gosh, I've spent the last 2 or 3 years doing paranormal investigations, but I've spent a lifetime studying different types of stories about places and investigating them and conducting interviews and stuff. So that's probably the scariest place. It's not a place that I'd want to go back, and I will tell you that the neighbors that live near there have called. They have contacted me and asked me to come back and bring my team because they are seeing. They said that they see children that walk from out of the woods. This is a heavily wooded area, and their eyes are red.
Ooh.
Yeah, I said no, thank you. I mean, I feel really bad for these people, but I mean, that's not even safe.
No.
That's not safe. Now, I will tell you that it took me more than a week to recover from that investigation because you're drained. You are so physically drained. The energy is you're just zapped. So, you feel flu-like. So that's what it feels like for me when I'm in a place where the energy is very, very strong and I'm not as much in control as I would like to be. You can be zapped pretty quickly. And it took at least a week to recover from that one.
I can believe it. So
right.
you dealt with cases like this. What about Civil War cases? I'm sure there's a few out there like that in the area, right?
Civil War cases?
Yeah.
Okay. So there are Civil War cases, and here's what normally that I see whenever I'm dealing with a Civil War haunting. Most of the time, if you go to a battlefield, you're going to hear stories of people seeing the ghost of soldiers, loading the cannons, or walking across areas where they may have walked before. That might be a residual haunting. That's just trapped energy. It's just a repeat over and over and over. So that's actually pretty common. Where it becomes uncommon or intelligent is where you have one that actually appears before you and can communicate or attempts to. That is completely different. Now, we have been in a place where, and gosh, they're all over. I mean, you almost can't go anywhere in this, think about the states where a lot of heavy fighting went on, and I guess it kind of went on all over the place, but I'm thinking about in terms of the towns and the skirmishes that were around, outside of just the battlefield. So even in the area like where I live, part of this was a battlefield. So the Battle of Tupelo was fought in the middle of July 1864, and you had 14,000 troops coming in on a 1 mile stretch. That's a long, long way. 1 mile wide, 14,000 Union troops that were coming in. And so this area was mainly cornfields, and a lot of the fighting went on, and most of the time wherever they dropped is where they ended up getting buried. So, over the years, people build houses, and you don't know where you're building a house on top of a grave or not. I will tell you that I have been told of some stories where a lady told me about a young boy that I wouldn't say he was a boy, he was a young man. She said he probably was no older than about 18. And she said, for the longest time, she said, this started when I was about 12 years old. And she said, he would appear in my window every single evening at the same time. And I said, well, what did he do? And she told me what he was wearing. It was your typical attire of a Confederate soldier. And she told me, she said, but she said his clothes looked worn, like holes in them and things. And I said, well, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And she said that he would just stand there and just look at her. But she said he never, really, he didn't try to talk. But she said it was really sad because he looked like he was confused or lost. And she said this went on for about 5 years. And she said, I did not see him anymore after she said, I went to college, but I would still come home on the weekends and stuff, whenever I was in college and I would come home. She said, but when I came home, I didn't see him anymore. She said that it's like it stopped. She said, but this went on from about the time I was 12 years old to about 17 or so. And when I went off to college and came back home on the weekends and things, she said, I noticed that I wasn't seeing him. And I said, well, that's interesting. That was during a time of her, which is interesting, the age.
Right.
If you notice that age of her, they a lot of people contribute poltergeist, the activity of poltergeist happening with girls, adolescent girls. So that's interesting that ghost showed up around that time. But she says that he never really, it was like he was kind of lost or something. But she said it was every day. Every day. So I found that very interesting. There's also people, though, that live in the area where she lived that have seen a soldier who walks across their yards, their lawns on a regular basis.
Huh.
So that may be a residual haunting, and it's always fascinating, but they've gotten pretty used to it. I do know that one girl that was interviewed years ago said that she grew up in a neighborhood here in town that in a house that she was absolutely terrified. Because she would look out the window and she would see them walking in the backyard.
Oh, that'd be creepy.
Yeah, she said that she would see several. And the thing is, she didn't know this at the time, but the house that she lived in was the site where 29 horse thieves were hanged for stealing horses.
Wow.
Hanged and buried. Yep, she didn't know that, though. So that's interesting that she was seeing all this in her backyard.
What about the house? What about the house you're in now? Because obviously, you're in that high end area. What does a medium do when you're in that high end of an area? That's so active.
Well, you just hope to God that you could just, lead a halfway normal life. And so that I will tell you what you do. After all these years of dealing with ghosts, for a long time, I used to think that there must be something wrong with me because I've lived in so many haunted houses. And then I figured out, no, it's because that you are sensitive to that. So no matter where you go, that's going to happen to you if it's there. You're going to recognize it. You're going to be sensitive to it. So it doesn't matter where you live. You know, you're either going to be lucky and there's not anything attached to a place, but you know, that's just going to be, you just have to get used to it. Thank God, I don't live in an area where there's anything bad going on, but I will tell you that I have had my moments here. I don't talk about it too much because I don't want to stir it up.
Right.
I will tell you that the dog, though, regularly lets me know when I'm not aware of it, just regularly. He is the ghost dog, my dog, Willie. So he sees it on a regular basis. Thank goodness not every day, but we usually know when it's around. But I will tell you, there have been times that I have saged the place and have had a come to Jesus talk with any spirits that are in my home that are not welcome here, or you know, functioning in the light or from the light or of the light. They have no welcome here. But sometimes even I have kind of, you know, approached this from a comical sense and have actually had a talk one day and said, look, if you're going to hang around here, you're going to have to at least do some laundry every now and then. I mean, you're going to have to pull your weight around here. So, you know, I try to keep a sense of humor about it. I did have some when I first moved in, there was some very bizarre things that were going on, and another medium actually came into my home, and we figured out what was happening. It was unnerving and scary. We kept hearing, or I kept hearing. Of course, I never would say anything about my children are grown now, but during that time they were young, and so I always was very careful. They didn't read my paranormal books that I was writing. That they didn't read that because I didn't want. They're just children. I'm very protective of them. But anyhow, I kept hearing this dragging noise, like what it sounds like when you scoot your feet across a floor or a concrete. It sounds like you're dragging a bag of potatoes, let's say. That noise, like something heavy that is being pulled and dragged across the floor. I kept hearing this, and it would get louder and louder and louder every day, and it was always, sometimes it'd be in the morning, and then sometimes right after lunch. But I would be sitting in here at my desk, and I would be working on my writing or whatever, and here would start this noise, and it got so loud one day. I knew what was happening. And I am telling you that I became alarmed, and it was getting. You could hear it getting closer to you. So it was physically there. I could hear it getting closer to me, and so I got up from my desk and I went, "Oh my God, I'm going to look around this corner here, and there is going to be, something in the kitchen. I'm going to see it." And when I actually got up and went to the edge, I'm not kidding you, as if it just stopped. Silence. Absolute silence. And I stood there and I went, "Oh my gosh." And I said to it, I just absolutely acknowledged it, and I said, "I know you're here. I hear you. You do this every single day. And now I have finally gotten up because it's so loud." And I said, "You've got to stop." And I talked to it just like that. And I told it, "I'm working. and they don't know what, who knows what I was talking to, but because I could not see them physically, and I couldn't get a visual on them mentally either. At that moment, it was as if they were there dragging this thing or whatever this was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other medium that came in to my home and did a sweep, he told me, he said, well, you realize what that was, don't you? And I said, well, I have a really good idea, but I really don't want to say because I live here. And he said, well, what you're thinking is correct. And I said, I was afraid of that. And he said, it was dragging a body off the field. I said, right.
Ew. Oh, wow.
Yeah. They were dragging it. The soldier was dragging a body off of the battlefield. That's what was happening because I'm smack in the middle of it. And anyway, so, but after I addressed it and told it that, there's got to be some rules here,
mm-hmm.
It got quiet. Now, it takes it'll crank up and do other things periodically over the years, but all of the major magic tricks, I'm being funny, but it they have quietened down, thank goodness. So,
wow.
Nice, quiet life. It's fun to write about this stuff, but sometimes you can scare yourself to death.
I can imagine.
Right.
Well, there's stories out of Gettysburg. I mean, there's one in particular that struck me of this woman that was making extra money by driving, because they have Civil War reenactors out there, and she was, she would go out every night to every evening to the battlefield and pick up the reenactors and drive them back to town, so they could go to their hotel or wherever they go, and she's driving along, and I guess she dropped them all off and didn't realize it. She looks in the rearview mirror, and there's still some sitting back there.
Oh, my God.
And then it dawns on her that they're not real people, sitting in the back of her pickup truck.
Yeah, she's picked up some hitchhikers.
Yeah. And they're sitting back there. After a while, they left, but she even at one point got out of her pickup truck to look and make sure. And then when she would get out, they weren't there. When she get back in, look in the rearview mirror, there they were.
That's
so
scary.
Creepy experience.
That is something that I don't want to encounter. I mean, I'm praying to God that I never encounter. That can cause you to wreck.
Yeah.
Run off the road. I mean, all I ask is that my ghost, if you're going to show yourself to me, don't do it while I'm driving down the road.
Well, it's like my house is active. I know they're here, and so I have an agreement with the ones that I know for a fact that don't come home with me from ghost hunts. I know you're here. I know you're here. Don't scare me.
Right. And most of the time, what we encounter in hauntings and everything, they're benign.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are just earth mountain spirits. I mean, it's rare that you run into something that is, really, really not good, malevolent, but that can happen. And I have, and I will tell you this too. There are instances where you will be, investigating. You may be investigating a location, and you think you're dealing with an earthbound spirit, but you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with a decoy, which is something that is it's not it's not a good spirit, and it's just pretending to be a sweet child or your grandmother or whatever. So you got to be careful.
Yeah.
Definitely do not. I don't play with Ouija boards. I know there are people that say, "Oh, now come on, that is a great divining tool." I understand all of that. At the same time, though, I also understand that it's very difficult for you to control. How are you controlling who you're contacting?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you're opening doors and you're letting something come through, and it's too late once that's done. So I just, I do think they're fascinating. I've even got a little box that's got the Ouija board front on it or whatever, but it's just for, for spooks and thrills, because I think that's cool, and because I'm a paranormal writer.
Sure.
But as far as me putting a planchette on it and saying, okay, who wants to talk tonight? Nope, I don't do that, but I don't even need to a lot of times when, I've got to try to sleep at night, and I would really, I've got enough dealings with the ghost I've got here. I don't want to be, inviting in others to
That's
come
funny.
join.
Well, that's funny. I can tell, just like you're so used to the ones you have in your house, you can tell when something comes home with you.
Oh, Lord.
Because they act completely different, And so I've had a lot of instances, well, not a lot, because I don't bring a lot home with me, but I've had several instances where I brought something home with me that just didn't act right, and I knew it. So I had to I had to order it out of the house or take it back to wherever it came from. But it's not fun. It's not fun at all.
It is not. You're right.
I've got a couple questions in the chat room. One is, do coastal areas have more activity for hauntings because of the water?
Well, I'm going to say not necessarily. Now, water is known to be a conductor. This is true. Are there hauntings on the ocean or in the ocean? Although some research says that there's more hauntings in the ocean than there is anywhere else on the earth.
Mm-hmm.
I still wonder how do you know that unless you conducted, decades and decades of tests in the water. So, I mean, here's the bottom line. Spirits are not confined to any particular area. As far as, are there more hauntings just because it's a coastal area? That's an interesting question, and the reason that I know where they're leading with that, because the water is a conductor. Does it mean that they possibly might be stronger? Maybe there are more intelligent hauntings. Maybe the amount of energy there seems to be a little stronger if the actual spirit is able to somehow use that to increase their their energy. I could see that would happen. But as far as most haunted sites, oh my goodness. I mean, I could take you to some places that you would it just defies explanation. It really does. Places like, the Waverly, there is a prison that is located, I don't think Waverly is the right word for it, but it's located in Tennessee. It's one of the state prisons that is abandoned, but it is very well known for being extremely haunted. But I will tell you that as far as the activity is concerned, has a lot to do with the history of the place and what is going on there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Another question. How can you know the difference between an oppression or a psychic problem? Or a psych problem?
That's a good question. First of all, I would make sure that you get, if a person thinks that if they're having some issues that have come up just suddenly, mm-hmm. I would always consult my doctor first and have an evaluation. But if I had lived in an area, this for example, the Devil's Den, okay? This particular family, this man had, I even asked the family, I said, look, did he ever have any problems before you moved there or whatever? She said, look, everybody has to deal with some anxiety and stress in their lives and things like that. And I said, correct, we all do at different times, And she says, but nothing to this degree. And he even started to tell me, I'm hearing voices. He told her at one point, if you knew what I was being told, you would leave here and get away. So it totally freaking this woman out. All of those things were pointing to spiritual oppression. Every single bit of it. I think that what they needed at that moment, they needed a combination of things. They needed, he might have needed some, to make sure that he didn't need something, a little anti-anxiety pill or whatever might have helped if he was dealing with stress from work. He was a truck driver. Or possibly they needed to, I would have just got out of that house. But, they needed to get help from a minister. But, look, in all fairness, they tried. Mm-hmm. They tried everything. They tried all of it. This is just a tragic story. So the main differences between it, because to answer your question, because honestly, a lot of these, they're very similar. So I handle this with kid gloves on this particular question because I'm not a physician, and I feel like that everyone should always seek the advice of a physician if they feel like that they have trouble. But when you're dealing with spiritual oppression versus psychic issues or whatever, sometimes they're very similar. Cool. And it's if you can eliminate anything that could be causing the added stress, whether it's a job change or too many changes in your life all of a sudden, or you're just suddenly starting to have, things that you're starting to change, your personality's changing, and you've recently moved to a new place or something like that. There's a lot of things you need to take into consideration, and you can get to the bottom of it.
Okay, cool. Last question. Everywhere you've been to write your books, where do you think is the most haunted areas?
The most haunted area. The most haunted area. Well, I've got to start to. I've got to look at them and think back. Where's the most haunted area in these books? Gosh. Well, I've been all over the state of Mississippi. Been in many places in Tennessee, all around the South. Different areas in the United States. I'm gonna be honest with you. Just because of the amount of torment that went on and the amount of hauntings that are recorded all over the South, and taking into consideration my friend, the medium who came here and said that it seemed like everywhere she looked, there were ghosts. I'm going to say that the South is one of the most haunted areas for two reasons. One, yes, the Civil War was fought here and there was a lot of death. But two, this was where a lot of the Trail of Tears, the Indians, the American Indians were moved from their homes. You had a lot of those. You had hundreds, thousands that passed away when they were moved out west to Oklahoma. So you had, different tribes that were affected by this. You had Alabama, you had Georgia, Florida, all of the, Mississippi, Tennessee. If I'm missing anybody, I'm not doing it on purpose. All of these Indians, these American Indians that were also moved out west, there are many of them that passed away. You've got some areas here that are, will we say, bubbling over they're bubbling over with spiritual activity because there's a lot of history that's here, and there's been bloodshed, and where there's been bloodshed and there's that history and it's not been healed, it's going to leave an imprint, and that imprint is either going to be residual or it will be intelligent. So if you have an earthbound spirit that has decided that they're attached to earth and they have not decided to transcend and to move on, then there you are. And, if you're a sensitive person, you're going to be like a sponge and you're going to sense that for the rest of your life, all over the time. I will tell you that people tell me that they visited places like in Scotland and places where there was horrific death and different things, and it left a sense of it was almost overwhelming. It made them sick at their stomach. So if you're a sensitive type person and you visit this area and you pick up on that, you may experience some of that as well. Maybe a little bit overwhelming to you, but there's a lot of history here. So the main thing about where's the most haunted places, I will tell you the most haunted places that I've been, no matter where they are those places where there has been something traumatic that has happened. It's like a horrible imprint there, and it's just unsettled. And that can be anywhere.
Wow, yeah. I know there's like even California out here, we even have Civil War battles out here.
Yeah, and look at Alcatraz.
Oh, yeah.
Can you imagine? I will tell you that, Alcatraz was on my bucket list for a long time. But after watching some of the ghost hunting shows that actually, they went to Alcatraz, they filmed there, there was one that I watched. I can't even remember if it was Taps. It's been years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of them, but there's been more. There's been a few that have been there. I was sitting in my living room watching this, and I thought, oh no, can you even imagine if I walk into that place? Oh my gosh, some awful, awful stories have come out of there. The things that people endured. And I think it would be too much. I really do. That is a place that even though I would love to see it,
yeah,
I think that I would have to really psych myself up before I went with a level of protection and do a lot of meditation before I go, because I really feel like it would be almost too much, too overwhelming.
Understood. Absolutely. Sydney, thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
This was terrific. I'd love to have you on again in the future, but my gosh, it was more than I could have asked for, and I thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, that was our guest. I learned a lot about Ghosts of the South. I've always been fascinated with the Southern ghosts because of the history back there, with the Civil Wars and the Native American battles and stuff. So I actually got to fulfill one of my fantasies and listening to stories. Tomorrow night, if anybody's into the Shroud of Turin, Joseph Marino is going to be with us. And Joseph Marino is an ex-Catholic official who got into studying the Shroud. He's been studying the Shroud for a long time. And he's found new revelations about the Shroud that we're going to hear about tomorrow night. Okay, so I'll have some video, some pictures of the Shroud and all that. But he'll be with us tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. It's hot right now. I get to go cool off for a little bit. And then this is the night that Nancy and I are going to work together and do my regression and see how that goes. And so it should be an interesting evening for me. But I want to thank everybody for coming. And like I said, I'll see you tomorrow. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, share it with 5 others, because we're equal opportunity here at California Haunts Radio. Be sure to visit the website, CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com. Also, if you're watching from YouTube and there's that little ghost down there at the bottom right-hand corner with the magnifying glass and the Sherlock Holmes hat, be sure to click on him to subscribe, because like I always tell people, we just don't do ghost stuff. We also do other types of videos, other types of shows as well. So I think there's a little bit of something for everybody on the YouTube page. So please check that out. And if you do go to our website, if you have trouble finding YouTube, be sure to go to the radio website. Every video on there is hooked into YouTube, so that you click on a video, it's going to take you over the YouTube site. Okay. Also, I'm putting together our blog talk, links to all our blog talk shows. It's taking a long time. I didn't realize how many shows I had done over there, but eventually I will have all the links lined up for the blog talk show. As you can see along the bottom, I have a ticker running. That's because, as I said earlier in the show, we don't take fees for our ghost hunting or anything like that. So, everything comes out of pocket. I'm the boss, so everything goes out of my pocket. Equipment, anything else you have here, that you see here. So if anything breaks, I got to, pay for it, just like the internet bill and everything else. If you could find it in your heart to help me out, that'd be great. At paypal.com at California Haunts. Or if you feel you don't like PayPal, Venmo, just type in California Haunts. Anyway, I want to leave you tonight. I'll leave you with her website, and she's got more books than what we showed tonight. But you can go to Amazon and find those. But I'll leave you with links to all that. So here we go. Let's get the links up. Now you probably already know them because I clicked on them by accident tonight. So here you go. Website: lsydneyfisher.medium.com. And of course, those are the books, her haunted series. More of her haunted series, which feature Ghosts of the South and Mississippi. And the Devil's Board, which I thought was rather interesting. It's college kids that had used a Ouija board and contacted something negative. And I thought the book was interesting. I've read it. It's a very fascinating book. But like I said, there's other books as well. So they're all available at Amazon if you want to check them out. And again, thanks for coming tonight. And I will see you tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Bye.